Okay, well the first challenge here was to create this little flip book. Now, if you found this really difficult, it was probably because you were making it more complicated than it need to. This is just an example of very specific linking from the outs to the ins. So for instance, if I go to the Germany tab, what we want to do is when you click on that, you want that to be in the forefront. So if we go to the outs, point and click, I click, and I'm going to go into my ins, and then when I do that, I want to bring to the front, which is under display. So it's a simple linking from an out to an in on the same object, and now when I run it, click, brings to the front. So actually all you needed to do was have that exact same wiring on every one of the pages and you're done. Okay, first challenge is a snap. Okay, the second part of this week's challenge was to create this interaction where you could dress this paper doll of Doris Day. Now, whenever you have a situation where you have repetitions of the same structure, I really recommend that you do one of them and then duplicate it rather than build out all the pieces. Like, don't create all the buttons and all the objects until you know how they're going to work. So to start out, I created a gown button using the button object and imported the image of the gown. Now, first off, the gown doesn't show up until after we ask for it, so we want to go to our gown, and under visibility, let's change it to hide on run, so that even though it's showing up right now, when we run this, it's going to disappear. Now the relationship we want is, when I click the gown, I want the gown to show up. And so that's simply linking from the button pressed out trigger from that button over to the gown image, and we're going to show it. Okay, simple as it can be. You might want to reposition the gown so that it is in the right spot. Let's try that. Run. Click gown. There it goes. Okay, nothing could be easier. Now, the reset button does the exact opposite. So when we hit reset, we want to hide the gown. Gown, reset. Excellent. So now when we're ready to proceed, all I need to do is click the gown button and the gown image. And I'm going to hold Alt as I drag. Notice that creates a copy. And notice that those things that are copied have new versions that are linked in the same way. Because I did not copy the reset, that same reset button continued to be in hide. So now all I have to do is switch this to, let's say, jacket. And get my jacket graphic, highlight it, release it, place as object only. So there's the jacket. Move that into place, and I'm ready to run. The gown, jacket, and reset. So there you go. You just need to do that for all the rest of the objects. You also want to figure out how to order them so that they show up in the right order. In general, you want to have the gown, the skirt, the jacket, then the stole, the scarf, the hat, and the pajamas. You can play around with whatever order makes sense for you. Okay, now the third part of the challenge was to modify this paper doll interaction so that the buttons would actually show the article of clothing, but also make it disappear, sort of like a toggle. To do this, we're going to use another property of that you get automatically with every button, and that is this thing called checked. And so a button is either always checked or not checked, and it's true or false. So we want to use that relationship. When it's checked, we'll show the gown. When it's not checked, we'll hide the gown. Now, this is interesting because we have this one button to do two different things. How does it know if it should be turning it on or off? Well, luckily, there is in our actions, you can either check or uncheck it, but there's also a toggle, which clearly does exactly the reverse of whatever it is right now. And so whatever we want to do is when the button is pressed, we're going to toggle the checked value. So that's going to just alternate between true and false. Okay? So that's how that works. Now, there's some other triggers here. When it gets checked on, we want to show the gown. Okay, so we're going to do display show. Whenever it gets checked off, we want to hide it. Okay, so we'll put our gown here. We'll test that. It's checked on, showing the gown. When we click it again, it's checked off. And so you can just toggle it as often as you want. Now here the reset, all it needs to do is when we click that, we want to always uncheck the gown. Okay? So now we'll show the gown. When we reset, it goes away. So that's all you need to do. To repeat that logic again for all the pieces, you can do that by Alt-Drag. Now also you might have thought of doing this a little bit differently, and that is, instead of having all of these triggers, which actually I don't know of any problem with this, but it adds some extra wires. Another way to do that was just to literally tie the checked value to the visibility of the gown. Okay, so when checked is false, the gown will be hidden. When it becomes true, the gown will show up, and that true and false will be triggered completely by toggling that value. We'll try that. Works exactly the same way. Again, I don't know that there's any particular benefit for one. Whichever one makes most sense to you is a great way to go ahead and do it. Okay, well that finishes up challenge 3, and next week we're going to do a little bit more on some of the intricacies of menus. But this whole business of connecting outs to ins, either on the same item or on other items, is really what is going to be at the root of all your interactivity. Okay, well, we'll look to see you next week.